It could mean actual advances in the field of science.
It's almost as if you've been doing too much science.
Since Halloween is almost upon us, I thought, what better way to celebrate than to rank the top 10 Halloween horror games on the NES? That's right. I don't usually make top 10 videos like this, but if I'm being honest, I need the views. Some of these games are god-awful, and some are pure classics, and there might be some surprises thrown in there. So let's take a look at the top 10 Halloween horror games on the NES. Let's watch. First up, some ground rules. I'm only looking at games that came out on the NES, meaning no Famicom exclusives. I'm also only looking at officially licensed games. So with that being said, let's start with the worst of the list, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is an action platformer developed by Advanced Communications Company and published by Bandai in 1989. The story of the game is based on Robert Louis Stevenson's novel, with Dr. Jekyll on the way to his forthcoming wedding to Miss Millicent. The game's ending depends on which character, Jekyll or Hyde, reaches the church first. As Dr. Jekyll walks to the church with his cane in hand, several townspeople, animals, and other obstacles obstruct his path, causing him to become angry.
Talbot, yeah? You're making me angry.
After his stress meter fills up, Dr. Jekyll will transform into Mr. Hyde. The gameplay then moves to a demonic world where Hyde will fire out a psycho wave at enemies. As Mr. Hyde kills these monsters, his anger abates and eventually he transforms back into Dr. Jekyll. Contrary to most platformers, Dr. Jekyll cannot kill the majority of his enemies, and as a result, must avoid his enemies rather than confront them directly. While the initial reviews upon release were mixed, reception became more negative as years progressed, with one review stating that the game is flawed on every fundamental level. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is possibly the most unplayable garbage available on the NES. The ninth game on the list is Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is a survival horror game developed by Atlas and published by LJN in 1989. Players control one of 6 camp counselors with a goal to find and defeat Jason Voorhees 3 times. Along the paths, players will find cabins, a lake, caves, and wooded areas, with all but cabins having enemies, such as zombies, crows, and wolves attacking the player. A timed alarm appears at certain intervals, requiring players to find Jason before he kills one or more children or another counselor. Using the map, players must navigate their way to Jason's location or switch to the counselor being attacked and defeat him. If they do not make it there in time, Jason will kill the counselors or some of the children. Friday the 13th is considered by some as one of the worst games of all time, with some critics saying, after playing a few minutes of this aardvark, you wanted Jason to slaughter all the counselors and then you. Anything, so it would just end. Coming in at number 8 is Fester's Quest. Fester's Quest is a shoot-'em-up developed and published by Sunsoft in 1989. It's based on the 1960s television series The Addams Family. One night, a UFO beams up all the residents of the city where the Addams family live. This is except for the members of the family, whom Grandmama, the only one to predict the invasion, cast a protective spell on their home beforehand. As the father of the family, Gomez Addams, must continue to guard the home from invaders. So it is up to Uncle Fester to use his guns and save the townspeople from the aliens. Reception for the game was lukewarm, with some calling out its flickery and unimpressive visuals, lack of humor, and unrewarding, mindless shooting gameplay consisting of constantly respawning enemies. Coming in at number 7 is Werewolf, The Last Warrior. Werewolf: The Last Warrior is a platformer developed and published by Data East in 1990. The game takes place on Red Earth, Earth's second colony planet. Dr. Farion adventured into a cave and awoke an ancient evil that made him turn into an evil entity. Afterwards, Dr. Farion created an army of evil mutants who imprison nearly everyone on Earth. The only hope for humanity is a man named Ken, the last of a tribe of changelings, who has the ability to transform into a werewolf named Werewolf. This game has mostly flown under the radar. It's not terrible, but it's also not great, with not a lot of reviews available as it hasn't really made an impact on pop culture. The sixth game on the list is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is a platformer developed by Imagineering and published by Toy Headquarters in 1992. This game is based on the children's cartoon show instead of the movie franchise of the same name.
And this is a giant fire-breathing tomato. A giant fire-breathing tomato?
The game's protagonist is Chad Finletter, a young boy who's on a quest to stop the evil scientist Dr. Putrid T. Gangrene from unleashing his doomsday tomato. During his journey, he must fight through legions of mutant tomatoes. Although this is a feat he will take on alone, as the citizens of San Zucchini are too afraid of the mutant tomatoes to aid him. Much like other platformer games of its time, the main method of killing the enemies is to jump on them, in this case squashing them, or breaking them into smaller tomato enemies. Like some other games on this list, this one has flown mostly under the radar and has not garnered a lot of praise or criticism. Number 5 is Bart vs. the Space Mutants. The Simpsons' Bart vs. the Space Mutants is a platformer developed by Imagineering and published by Acclaim in 1991. Shape-shifting aliens have invaded Earth, and Bart Simpson is the only one who knows of the alien secret plan. His X-ray specs allow him to identify aliens in human form, similar to the sunglasses from the 1988 film They Live. He has to stop them from collecting the items they need to build their ultimate weapon to take over the world. This game was a bestseller and sold over 1 million copies, although reviews of Bart vs. the Space Mutants have been mixed, with one reviewer noting that the biggest drawback of this game is its brutally difficult opening section. However, what makes it challenging are clever strategic puzzles rather than thumb-bruising acrobatics. Bart tests reflexes and imagination in a way all too rarely seen in video games. The fourth game on the list is Devil World. Devil World is a Pac-Man-style maze game developed and published by Nintendo in 1984. Players control Tamagon, a green dragon who decides to attack the Devil's World. He navigates through a series of mazes patrolled by monsters and touches crosses to power up and summon the ability to breathe fire and eat the dots in the maze. The large winged demon, simply called the Devil, dances at the top of the screen and will point in a direction for his 4 minions to move the maze by using pulleys and ropes. This can be dangerous, however, as Tamagon can be squished by getting caught between a maze wall and the moving outer boundary. Devil World was designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, who would later go on to create Super Mario Bros., among other classics. It was directed by Miyamoto as his first console-only game. The game provided Tezuka's first project when he joined Nintendo full-time. The duo flew to Nintendo of America to show Devil World to its president Minoru Arakawa, but he did not wish to release the game in North America due to the company having policies over the use of religious icons in games, which has made this game a gem for collectors. The version I have in my collection is the European PAL release. Coming in at number 3 is Wizards and Warriors. Wizards and Warriors is a platformer developed by Rare and published by Acclaim in 1987. Players take on the role of the hero Kuros, the knight warrior of the Books of Excalibur, against the main antagonist, the evil wizard Malkil. He used to be considered one of the greatest wizards in the land, such that Merlin was one of his students. However, the aging Malkil has gone mad and has started using his magic for evil. As a result, Malkil has captured the princess and holds her prisoner in Castle Ironspire, deep within the forest of Elrond. Players control Kuros as he makes his way through the forest of Elrond to Castle Ironspire, where he must defeat the evil wizard Malkil and rescue the princess. The game received overall positive reviews, with perception that it was technically well ahead of other games for the console at the time. The second game on my list is Ghosts and Goblins. Ghosts and Goblins is a brutal platformer developed by Capcom and published by Taito in 1986. Players control a knight named Sir Arthur, who must defeat zombies, ogres, demons, cyclops, dragons, and other monsters in order to rescue Princess Prin, who has been kidnapped by Astaroth, king of the demon world. The player can only be hit twice before losing a life. Losing a life will result in having to restart the level, or starting at the halfway point if the player has managed to get that far. Furthermore, each life can only last a certain length of time. After defeating the final boss, the player must then replay the entire game on a higher difficulty level to reach the genuine final battle. The game was a major commercial success and received generally positive reviews from critics, and is often cited as one of the most difficult games of all time. Alright, before I reveal the number 1 Halloween horror game on the NES, let's take a look at some honorable mentions. Coming in at number 1, probably not a surprise, Castlevania. A total of 3 Castlevania games came out on the NES, but I'm giving the top spot to the original, the granddaddy that kicked off the entire franchise, although any one of them could have easily made this list. Castlevania is a platformer developed and published by Konami in 1986. Players control Simon Belmont, descendant of a legendary vampire hunter who enters the castle of Count Dracula to destroy him when he suddenly reappears 100 years after Simon's ancestor vanquished him. The ultimate goal is to defeat Count Dracula himself at the end of Stage 18, triggering the collapse of the castle and allowing the player to restart the game at an increased difficulty. Castlevania was directed by Hitoshi Akamatsu. An admirer of cinema, Akamatsu approached projects with a film director's eye and said the visuals and music for Castlevania were made by people who consciously wanted to do something cinematic. With Castlevania, he wanted players to feel like they were in a classic horror film. Castlevania is an absolute classic, with Game Informer ranking it as the 48th best game ever made, with some praising the huge playing area and lots of neat touches that would keep you engrossed for weeks. So what do you think? Are there any games I missed, or do you challenge any of these? Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to like this video if you want to see more top 10 content like this. And subscribe if you want to see more videos about 80s and 90s nostalgia. Not just video games, but about anything pop culture. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.